Let's continue. A $1 bill, and the United States being a British colony until 1776. On the front side of the bill, we see George Washington, the first US president, Freemason, and one of the founding fathers. On the back of the bill, we see a pyramid with an eye. Many recognize this image as a symbol of a secret society wanting to control the world. But few know that this is called a radiant delta, a Masonic symbol, and few know that it's the official seal of the United States of America since 1782. Yes, the eagle that you see on the bill is the front of the Great Seal, and the pyramid is the back of the official seal of the United States of America, founded by Freemasons, George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, to name only a few.
Olive branch, and I think this really signifies that we're a nation first, a peace-loving nation. We were now governed by a greater, in a sense, a greater power than any king, any one ruler. We get there.
Okay, well, Steve Estrada, thank you very much. 225 years young, the Great Seal of the United States, and we can check out this exhibition at the State Department, correct?
Correct.
Okay, have a good one, sir. Thanks.
Thanks.
Centuries ago, before the so-called revolutions, the so-called change in the governance systems, and the so-called democracies, ruling families of Europe got united through consecutive marriages between themselves and finally united around the British Empire. They united around the British Empire, and here we'll see how close they are. Here we see George V with his granddaughter, the Queen Elizabeth of England. George V had a sister named Maud, who had a son who was the King of Norway, Olav V, and Olav V had a son, Harald V, the current King of Norway, cousin of Queen Elizabeth of England. Again, we see George V. George V had an uncle named Prince Arthur, who had a daughter named Margaret. Margaret had a daughter who was named Ingrid of Sweden, and Ingrid had a daughter, Margaret II, the present Queen of Denmark, cousin of Queen Elizabeth. Margaret, the cousin of George V, was also the mother of Gustav Adolf, who had a son, Charles XVI Gustav, the present King of Sweden, cousin of Queen Elizabeth. George V also had an aunt named Princess Beatrice, who had a daughter named Victoria Eugenie, who had a son, Juan of Bourbon, who was Juan Carlos' father, the King of Spain, and currently Felipe, who is the King of Spain. And as we saw at the beginning, George V had a first cousin, the Tsar of Russia. Their mothers were sisters. Alexandra of Denmark was the mother of George V, and her sister Maria was the mother of Nicholas II, the Tsar of Russia. Here we see Maria and her son Nicholas II and the 5 children of Nicholas. And George V had several sons. He had the father of Queen Elizabeth, George VI, but he also had a son named George of Kent, and the latter had a son named Prince Edward of Kent. And we'll see who is Edward of Kent.
Following Grand Lodges. The Grand Lodge of New Zealand. The Grand Lodge of the State of Israel. The Grand Lodge Alpina of Switzerland.
Self-evident, Brother Franklin, all men are created equal.
Indeed, Brother Washington. All Freemasons meet as equals, and we have an opportunity to create a nation in the very essence of Masonic morality.
With freedom and tolerance of all religions and moralities that no government can oppress.
You know, I think it would be a great idea if we wore our Masonic regalia when we're putting in place the foundation stone for the Capitol building.
Freedom of speech, too, and the press, the right to peaceful assembly, and... Did you say regalia?
Yes. Well, it would be wonderfully symbolic, don't you think?
You'll be wanting to put the all-seeing eye on our banknotes next.
You think I'm taking it a bit far?
Please don't...
To order, brethren, to receive the most worshipful, the Grand Master.
Centuries ago, before the so-called revolutions, the so-called change in the governance systems, and the so-called democracies, ruling families of Europe got united through consecutive marriages between themselves and finally united around the British Empire. They understood that in order to not lose their power, they had to unite and operate subtly with the people, their subjects. To handle peoples, they had to be a sole force, only one group in the whole world. They understood that to reign continually, they had to manipulate people, they had to form diverse and multiple forms of governments, of states, of opposing parties, in short, replaceable fuses that will blow at their place and that they would change along with trends and needs. And they did it. They understood that they had to manipulate not only the majority, but also a minority closer that they needed to persuade and conquer, that will be more or less aware of these truths, of secrets, their people. And so they created this fraud of Freemasonry, people that would think being brothers and knights, that through their daily activities would think work for the good. They understood that to succeed and get to their means, they had to proceed in a methodical, mathematical and scientific way, dealing with the masses, and extremely credible dealing with their minority. For peoples, the masses, the fraud of states, votes, democracies, dictators, wars, state coups, revolutions, etc., etc. For their people, the Freemasons, the fraud of a prospect of a better world for all and an overdose of benevolence and humanism, associations and foundations at will, doing benevolence in a big scale, and never their people would question good doers, so-called disinterested. They agreed from the beginning. First principle, everything will be under their control, everything. No one will have the control of money in the world other than them. Zero exceptions, total control. The big companies, the multinationals, they created and create all that is big, and what gets big and succeeds is theirs at 100%. Zero exceptions, zero. Different names, different brands, different countries, different founders, 100% theirs. No one will have the control of tools of propaganda other than them. Printing houses, newspapers, and later on, television networks, the media, social networks, all, zero exceptions, total control, as well as fields of communication, health, education, etc., etc. Different names playing the competition, commercial wars and lawsuits to stay extremely credible. Example, Google and Yahoo, Microsoft and Apple, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, etc., etc. All the multinationals, zero exception. First principle, well designed and well led in a methodical and scientific way, people will think living in a world divided by states and regimes more or less authoritarian or democratic, but only one group governs and decides which people of which country must live well, which people of which country must work more, and which people of which country must suffer economically, etc., etc. The people that must, in all cases, live decently to extremely well, to not question them, will be the minority that they methodically control. People that anyhow think of them as good doers of humanity, who think being brothers and think doing the good. No one will talk, all will surrounded, spying on each others, and the fraud spying on all. Well confined, and now the connected bracelets for their good and the good of all. Politics in the world, it's them at 100%. It's one of the first principles. The opposing parties, the extreme parties that insult each others, the new parties, depending on trends, parliamentarians since centuries, those who mislead people on what Freemasonry really is. It's them. Writers, historians, journalists, bloggers, YouTubers, more or less famous, simple Freemasons, acting for the most of them innocently, being convinced of protecting the good doers of humanity. Those who know these secrets have no reason wanting to disclose them. They have at the minimum a decent life. They won't let them in an uncomfortable situation, as they would then question things. So they have lives ranging from at minimum decent to extremely successful: business, media, politics, show business, art, science, etc., etc. And as they think of them as selfless good doers acting for the good of all, they protect them, take part, and let them do. Charity, or how to create faithfuls, build a base and retain a round. Head on, it was not possible, so they imagined how to ensure support and fidelity of a minority otherwise than by money alone, and they came to that. Through their daily tasks, those who will do good every day in structures set up by them will think them good. Disinterested good doers, those who will see them install water and electricity in villages, will think them good. Those who see them modernize hospitals in the third world will think them good. Those who see them help in villages in Africa will think them good. And above all, do not forget to install the Wi-Fi all over the place. Through their humanitarian acts, they show out of interest a desire of wanting to do good and lead to something better for everyone. This is not the case. It's not their final goal. By doing so, they know that honest people will protect them, trusting, righteous, and selfless good doers. Their act of charity is first and foremost out of interest, not to authentically help, the primary interest being to seduce, please, and convince a minority to accept and think that so everything they do must be good, and let them do by protecting them and staying silent. Helping people through charity and solidarity is a strategy to please and coax that they have elaborated centuries ago. It's not an end in itself. They do not seek the common good. Their charitable acts are savvy calculations from the outset only to acquire the fidelity of the people who will protect them, not just for money. They had to credibly appear extremely good and charitable. In short, humanistic, selfless good doers. And they did it, and they do it today. They understood that they had to appear honest, and so people who had looted the whole world and generations of people in countries they have qualified as uncivilized began promoting and extolling the chivalrous spirit and honesty and morality to their people. That's it. There is no more power struggle in this world. There is none. It was already settled centuries ago. Only one group, one, leads the show. The revolutions, the revolutionaries, so-called imprisoned heroes. It's them, the putschists who makes a coup, the revealing hero who is hiding in one of their embassies. It's them, the same, a long time ago already. Everything is fake, rigged, but it must remain extremely credible, prepared years and decades in advance with multiple pounds presented to the public and made more or less known by their media for multiple variants of regime change scenarios when and where required.